The massive Imperial starship Dominion's Eye drifted through the void between stars, its hull gleaming like polished obsidian against the cosmic darkness. Inside the ship's vast scanning chamber, Junior Survey Officer Kethma reviewed the latest batch of planetary reports with the same boredom that had defined his career for the past 3 decades. World after world scrolled across his display screens. Gas giants with nothing but methane storms, rocky planets too close to their suns to support life, dead moons covered in ice. The galaxy was full of worthless rocks, and Kethma had seen them all. His clawed fingers tapped against the control panel as another system appeared on his screen. A small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. The third planet from the star caught his attention for exactly 12 seconds. Blue and green swirls covered most of its surface. Primitive electromagnetic signals buzzed from its continents like the chatter of insects. Kethma ran the standard scans. The planet's inhabitants had discovered basic radio waves and primitive nuclear energy. Their most advanced flying machines barely reached their own atmosphere. According to Imperial classification standards, they were at least 500 years away from developing faster-than-light travel. He typed his report with practiced efficiency. Sol 3, Designation Earth, Primitive Agricultural World, Class 7. Population estimated at 7 billion. Technology level, pre-space. Threat assessment negligible. Recommended action. Monitor every 50 years for development progress. The report joined thousands of others in the Imperial database. Earth became nothing more than a single line in a vast catalog of unimportant worlds. Kethma never gave it another thought. Far across the galaxy, Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Conquest. Behind him stretched the magnificent sight of the 47th Pacification Fleet, 237 warships arranged in perfect formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, capable of reducing entire worlds to ash. Vextar's scaled hide bore the scars of a dozen campaigns. His yellow eyes held the cold confidence of someone who had never faced a real challenge. For 40 years he had crushed rebellions and conquered systems for the Empire. The upcoming mission would be no different. "Admiral," his navigation officer reported, "we have our route to the Kepler sector. The rebels there have been growing bold. High Command wants them eliminated completely." Vextar studied the star chart that appeared before him. The hyperspace route would take them through several insignificant systems, including one marked as Sol. He barely glanced at the notation beside it. Primitive Agricultural World, Class 7. "How long until we reach the rebel stronghold?" Vextar asked. 17 days, sir. We'll make 3 stops for navigation recalibration." "Good. The rebels think distance will protect them. They'll learn otherwise." Vextar had conquered 43 worlds during his career. Some had fought back with primitive weapons. Others had surrendered immediately. All had fallen before Imperial might. The idea that any species could pose a genuine threat to the Empire was laughable. Meanwhile, 3,000 light-years away, Dr. Sarah Chen descended into the deepest levels of Cheyenne Mountain through a series of security checkpoints that officially didn't exist. Each scanner verified her identity through retinal patterns, DNA samples, and brainwave signatures. The mountain held many secrets, but none as important as Project Prometheus. The elevator dropped for nearly a mile before finally stopping. The doors opened to reveal a vast underground complex carved from solid rock. Hundreds of scientists and engineers moved through corridors lined with equipment that shouldn't have existed for another century. Sarah walked quickly toward the main laboratory, her security badge glowing softly as it granted her access to areas where few humans had ever been. The badge was black with a simple designation: Director, Xenotechnology Division. 27 years ago, something had crashed in the Nevada desert. The official story spoke of a weather balloon. The truth was far more extraordinary. A small alien scout ship, apparently damaged and abandoned, had provided humanity with its first glimpse of technology beyond Earth. The crash had changed everything. World governments that had spent centuries fighting each other suddenly found themselves working together on a project more important than any territorial dispute. If aliens existed and if they possessed technology far beyond human understanding, then Earth needed to prepare for the day when those aliens might return. Sarah entered the main laboratory and stopped before the result of nearly 3 decades of work. The ship before her looked like nothing that should have been able to fly. Its hull curved in impossible ways, covered in a metal that shifted color depending on the viewing angle. Strange symbols glowed softly along its sides, pulsing with an inner light that human science couldn't fully explain. They called it Terra's Wrath, though Sarah preferred to think of it as humanity's first real starship. Every system aboard the vessel represented a fusion of human engineering and alien technology. The original alien ship had been a marvel, but human creativity had found ways to improve upon its design. The ship's power core used principles that human physicists were still trying to understand. It generated more energy than should have been possible from such a small device. The hull could repair itself and adapt to different types of damage. Most remarkably, the navigation system seemed designed to work with a living consciousness rather than a computer. "Dr. Chen," called a voice from across the laboratory. Dr. James Morrison, her second in command, approached with a tablet full of test results. "We've completed the final systems checks. Everything is functioning beyond expected parameters." Sarah nodded, though worry lines creased her forehead. "And Captain Rodriguez? Is he ready for the neural interface?" Morrison's expression grew serious. "He's as ready as anyone can be for something that's never been attempted before. The alien technology seems designed for a direct mental connection with the pilot. Our simulations suggest it will work, but we won't know for sure until we try it," Sarah finished. "And if it doesn't work, then we'll have built the most advanced ship in human history with no way to fly it properly." Sarah looked at the ship again. Everything they had worked for, everything humanity might become, depended on whether human minds could successfully interface with alien technology. The risks were enormous, but the alternative was worse. Somewhere above them, astronomers tracked radio signals from distant stars. Most believed humanity was alone in the universe. A few suspected that other intelligences might exist somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds. None of them knew that first contact had already happened, and that humanity's response to that contact was taking shape in the depths of a mountain. The Empire had dismissed Earth as a primitive world of no importance. Admiral Vextar was leading his fleet toward a routine mission, expecting nothing more challenging than putting down another rebellion. Neither the Empire nor the Admiral knew that Earth had spent nearly 30 years preparing for their arrival. Project Prometheus remained humanity's most closely guarded secret. Only a few hundred people knew the full truth about the alien crash and the ship it had inspired. But soon, very soon, the secret would be revealed to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. The universe was about to discover that underestimating humanity was a very dangerous mistake. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood before the neural interface chamber, watching technicians make final adjustments to equipment that looked more like a medical operating room than anything belonging on a starship. Dozens of thin cables hung from the ceiling, each one ending in a connector designed to link directly with human nervous system. Rodriguez had been Earth's best test pilot for 15 years. He had flown experimental aircraft that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. He had survived crashes that should have killed him and completed missions that others called impossible. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. Dr. Sarah Chen approached him, carrying a tablet displaying his medical charts. "Marcus, you understand what we're asking of you. The neural interface has never been tested on a human being. Our computer simulations suggest it will work, but we can't be certain until someone actually tries it. I understand the risks, Doc, but if this ship is going to protect Earth, someone has to learn how to fly it properly. Might as well be me." The alien technology they had recovered seemed designed for a direct connection between pilot and ship. Traditional human flight controls simply didn't work with the vessel's systems. The ship needed to be guided by thought and instinct rather than mechanical input. Rodriguez had volunteered for the procedure after seeing the test results. When connected to a computer interface, the alien ship performed adequately. But when linked to a human consciousness, even through primitive neural connections, its capabilities increased dramatically. The ship seemed to anticipate what the pilot wanted to do before they fully decided to do it. "The process will be painful," Dr. Chen warned. "We're essentially rewiring parts of your nervous system to communicate with alien technology. If something goes wrong, Earth stays defenseless." "I've read the reports, Doc. We both know what's coming." Rodriguez was right, and Dr. Chen knew it. Intelligence gathered from the alien ship's computer systems had revealed the existence of a vast galactic empire. Sooner or later, that empire would notice Earth. When that day came, humanity needed every advantage it could get. The neural interface procedure took 6 hours. Rodriguez remained conscious throughout the process, feeling alien technology merge with his nervous system in ways that human language couldn't describe. The ship's consciousness touched his mind like a curious animal investigating something new. By the time the procedure was complete, Rodriguez could feel the ship's systems as if they were extensions of his own body. The power core hummed in harmony with his heartbeat. The hull's sensors fed information directly to his brain. Most remarkably, he could sense the ship's potential in ways that defied explanation. The first test flight took place 3 days later. Rodriguez sat in the pilot's chair, neural cables connecting him to the ship's systems. Around him, the bridge displayed information in ways that seemed tailored specifically for human understanding. The alien designers had created something remarkable, technology that adapted itself to work with different types of minds. All systems show green. "Marcus?" Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication system. "How do you feel?" Rodriguez smiled as the ship's engines came online. Through the neural interface, he could feel the incredible power contained within the small vessel. "I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The Terra's Wrath lifted off from its underground hangar and rose through a concealed shaft that emerged on the mountain's surface. Within minutes, the ship had left Earth's atmosphere and was accelerating toward the outer edge of the solar system. Traditional human spacecraft would have taken months to reach the same destination. The Terra's Wrath made the journey in less than 4 hours. Its alien drive systems bending space around the vessel in ways that human physics was only beginning to understand. But speed was only one of the ship's advantages. During the test flight, Rodriguez discovered capabilities that the original alien designers had never intended. The ship's adaptive systems learned from his human intuition, developing new tactical possibilities that pure logic would never have conceived. When Rodriguez tested the ship's weapon systems, he found that human creativity had improved upon alien engineering in unexpected ways. The energy weapons could be configured in ways that defied conventional understanding. The defensive systems responded to threats with an almost instinctive awareness. Most importantly, the ship seemed to enhance human cognitive abilities. Rodriguez found himself processing information faster and making connections that would normally have taken him much longer to recognize. The neural interface didn't just allow him to control the ship, it made him a better pilot. During one test, something unexpected happened. While Rodriguez was practicing high-speed maneuvers near the edge of the solar system, the ship's navigation systems detected an anomaly in space-time. For a fraction of a second, the Terra's Wrath created a tiny wormhole that connected to something vast and distant. Through the brief connection, the ship's sensors accessed what appeared to be a galactic communication network. Massive amounts of data flowed through the connection before it collapsed. Fleet movements, tactical information, technological specifications, everything humanity needed to understand the threat they would soon face. "Did you see that?" Rodriguez asked Dr. Chen over the communication link. "We recorded everything. Marcus, I think we just tapped into their military network. We have intelligence about Imperial fleet movements, including one that's heading in our direction." The data was both terrifying and invaluable. An Imperial fleet of more than 200 ships was traveling toward the outer rim of the galaxy. Their route would take them directly through Earth's solar system. Arrival time, less than 3 weeks. Rodriguez felt the ship's systems responding to his emotional state. The neural interface carried his determination and resolve into the vessel's consciousness. In response, the ship's capabilities seemed to expand even further. "Doc, this ship isn't just a weapon. It's a partner. The alien technology was designed to work with living minds, but I don't think they ever tried it with human minds. We think differently than they do." Dr. Chen studied the readings from Rodriguez's neural interface. "How so?" "They built this technology to be logical and predictable. But humans aren't logical or predictable. We make intuitive leaps that pure logic can't follow. We take risks that cautious minds would never attempt, and this ship amplifies all of that." Over the following weeks, Rodriguez and the Terra's Wrath practiced maneuvers that pushed both pilot and ship beyond their theoretical limits. The neural interface allowed them to achieve a level of coordination that was almost telepathic. Rodriguez began to think of the ship not as a machine he controlled, but as an extension of his own will. The ship's consciousness adapted to human thought patterns in ways that surprised everyone involved in the project. It began to anticipate not just what Rodriguez intended to do, but what he might need to do in future situations. The vessel was learning to think like a human while retaining all the advantages of alien technology. As the Imperial fleet drew closer to Earth, Rodriguez spent every possible moment linked to the ship's systems. He learned to use weapons that could tear through the strongest known materials. He practiced evasive maneuvers that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Most importantly, he developed an understanding of Imperial technology that would prove crucial in the battles to come. The Terra's wrath was ready. Rodriguez was ready. The question that remained was whether one ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against the might of an entire Imperial fleet. Soon they would have their answer. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the Iron Conquest, watching the hyperspace tunnel collapse behind his fleet as they dropped back into normal space at the edge of an unremarkable solar system. The star charts identified it as Sol, home to a primitive world that barely warranted Imperial attention. "Navigation recalibration complete, Admiral," reported his officer. "We should be ready to jump to the next waypoint within the hour." Vextar nodded absently, his attention focused on the tactical display. The 47th Pacification Fleet spread out before him in perfect formation, 237 ships representing the finest military technology the Empire had to offer. Each vessel was capable of destroying entire cities with a single blast from its main weapons. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting increased electromagnetic activity from the third planet, higher than what we recorded during the last survey." "How much higher?" Vextar asked, though he wasn't particularly concerned. Primitive worlds often showed technological advancement between surveys. Approximately 15% above previous levels, still well within acceptable parameters for a Class 7 civilization. Vextar dismissed the information with a wave of his clawed hand. Even a 50% increase in activity would be meaningless. The primitive inhabitants of Sol 3 were still centuries away from developing technology that could threaten the Empire. In the depths of Cheyenne Mountain, alarms began ringing throughout the Project Prometheus facility. Dr. Sarah Chen rushed to the command center, where technicians were frantically analyzing incoming data from their deep space monitoring systems. "Report," she ordered. "We have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system," replied the chief operator. "Configuration matches Imperial fleet formations from the intelligence we gathered. Over 200 ships, including several Dreadnought-class vessels." Dr. Chen felt her stomach tighten. They had known this day would come, but knowing something intellectually was very different from facing it in reality. "How long before they notice our defensive preparations?" "Unknown. Their sensors are more advanced than ours, but we've kept all major installations hidden. As long as they don't conduct a detailed planetary scan, we should remain undetected." "Where's Captain Rodriguez?" "Already aboard the Terra's Wrath and preparing for launch. He's requesting permission to engage." Dr. Chen hesitated. Once Rodriguez launched, there would be no hiding Earth's capabilities from the Empire. But if the Imperial fleet decided to conduct a thorough scan of the system, they would discover humanity's preparations anyway. "Tell him he's authorized to launch. God help us all." Rodriguez felt the neural interface come alive as the Terra's Wrath powered up its systems. Through the ship's sensors, he could perceive the massive Imperial fleet hanging in space like a swarm of metal predators. 237 ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything Earth had ever built, except for the ship he was now bonded with. "Command, this is Rodriguez. All systems are green. Beginning approach to target zone." The Terra's Wrath accelerated away from Earth at velocities that should have been impossible for any physical object to achieve. The ship's hull shimmered as exotic energies bent space around it, creating a bubble of twisted reality that allowed faster-than-light travel without entering hyperspace. "Admiral." Vextar was reviewing reports from his sector commanders when his sensor operator made an announcement that changed everything. "Admiral, we have a contact approaching from the direction of the third planet. Single ship, unknown configuration. Speed is—" "That can't be right. What's the reading?" Vextar demanded. "Sir, the contact appears to be traveling at approximately 800 times the speed of light. Without using hyperspace." Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. Such speeds were impossible without hyperspace technology, and only the most advanced Imperial ships could achieve even half that velocity. Are you certain of these readings? Yes, sir. The contact will reach our position in approximately 4 minutes. For the first time in decades, Admiral Vextar felt a flutter of uncertainty. How could a primitive world possess technology superior to Imperial science? Alert all ships. Battle stations. Prepare to intercept the contact. The Terra's Wrath dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Imperial formation. Through the neural interface, Rodriguez could feel the surprise and confusion radiating from the enemy ships. Their sensors were scanning his vessel frantically, trying to understand what they were facing. Rodriguez opened a communication channel, broadcasting on standard Imperial frequencies. Imperial Fleet, this is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Earthship Terra's Wrath. You are in violation of solar system sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. On the bridge of the Iron Conquest, Admiral Vextar stared at the image of the strange vessel that had appeared among his fleet. It was smaller than most Imperial ships but radiated energy signatures that defied classification. More disturbing was the fact that a supposedly primitive species was communicating in perfect Imperial standard. Admiral, his communications officer reported, the contact is using Imperial communication protocols. How is that possible? Vextar didn't answer immediately. Something was very wrong with this situation. Send a response. Demand to know how they acquired Imperial technology. Rodriguez received the Admiral's message and smiled grimly. Through the neural interface, he could feel the Terra's Wrath analyzing the Imperial ships, identifying weaknesses in their designs that even their builders didn't know existed. Admiral Vextar, Rodriguez replied, your Empire made a mistake when they classified Earth as a primitive world. We've been watching you for longer than you know. Final warning, withdraw from this system. Vexatar's confusion transformed into anger. No primitive species had ever dared to threaten an Imperial fleet. I don't know how you acquired our technology, but you're still vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and your world might be spared. Counteroffer, Rodriguez said. Leave now and your fleet might survive. Admiral Vextar had heard enough. Deploy screening formation. 3 destroyers intercept and disable that vessel. I want prisoners for interrogation. The Imperial destroyers Bloodstrike, Void Hunter, and Star Render broke formation and accelerated toward the lone Earth ship. Each destroyer carried enough firepower to level a continent. Against a single unknown vessel, they should have been overwhelming force. Rodriguez watched the approaching destroyers through the ship's sensors. The neural interface fed him tactical information about their capabilities, weaknesses, and probable attack patterns. More importantly, it allowed him to coordinate with the ship's consciousness in ways that purely logical minds couldn't achieve. Terra's Wrath. Let's show them what humans can do. The first destroyer, Bloodstrike, opened fire with its primary energy cannon. The blast should have vaporized any ship smaller than a cruiser. Instead, the Terra's Wrath seemed to fold space around itself, causing the energy beam to pass harmlessly through empty space. Before the Imperial gunners could adjust their aim, Rodriguez counterattacked. The Earthship's weapons had been designed using principles that combined human creativity with alien technology. Instead of a simple energy beam, they projected controlled tiers in spacetime that ignored conventional defensive systems. The Bloodstrike simply came apart, its hull separating along molecular boundaries as reality itself was rewritten around it. The destroyer's crew had perhaps 2 seconds to realize what was happening before their ship ceased to exist. The Void Hunter and Star Render immediately changed tactics, attempting to flank the Earthship from 2 directions. Rodriguez felt their intentions through the neural interface before they completed their maneuvers. The ship responded to his will, accelerating in a direction that geometry insisted was impossible. The Terra's Wrath appeared directly above the Void Hunter, its weapons already charging. The second destroyer managed to get off a single shot before it suffered the same fate as its companion. Spacetime warped around the Imperial ship, and it disintegrated into component atoms. The Star Render attempted to retreat, but the Earthship's speed made escape impossible. Rodriguez didn't destroy the third destroyer immediately. Instead, he used the ship's advanced systems to disable its engines and weapons, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. From start to finish, the engagement lasted exactly 17 seconds. Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 of his best destroyers had been eliminated by a single unknown vessel in less than half a minute. The primitive world his survey teams had dismissed was defending itself with technology that surpassed Imperial science. "All ships," he ordered, his voice steady despite his shock. "Maximum alert. We are no longer dealing with a primitive civilization." Rodriguez opened the communication channel again. "Admiral, you've lost 3 ships. How many more are you willing to sacrifice for your empire's arrogance?" For the first time in 40 years of military service, Admiral Vextar didn't know how to respond. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had just been proven wrong by a single ship from a world that shouldn't have posed any threat to the Empire. The real battle was about to begin. Admiral Vextar stood in stunned silence as debris from 3 destroyed Imperial destroyers drifted past his flagship's viewports. In 40 years of military service, he had never witnessed such a complete tactical disaster. A single enemy ship had eliminated 3 of his vessels in 17 seconds, using weapons technology that defied Imperial understanding. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the enemy vessel is maintaining position approximately 50,000 kilometers from our formation. It appears to be waiting." Vextar studied the strange ship on his display screens. Its hull shifted color constantly, reflecting energy patterns that Imperial sensors couldn't properly classify. More troubling was the fact that it seemed to anticipate Imperial movements before they were made. During the brief engagement, the enemy ship had responded to tactical decisions before his own captains had finished making them. "Status report on the disabled destroyer," Vextar ordered. "The star render is intact but completely powerless. Engineering teams report that their systems have been selectively disabled with surgical precision. Whoever did this understands Imperial technology better than we do." That was impossible, but Vextar had seen the evidence with his own eyes. Somehow a primitive world had developed technology that not only matched Imperial capabilities but exceeded them in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Rodriguez floated in the pilot's chair of the Terra's Wrath, neural cables connecting his consciousness to the ship's systems. Through the interface, he could feel the confusion and growing fear radiating from the Imperial fleet. Their formations had shifted from aggressive to defensive, with ships clustering together like frightened animals. "Command, this is Rodriguez. First engagement is complete. 3 enemy destroyers eliminated. 1 disabled for intelligence gathering. Awaiting further orders." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. "Marcus, we're monitoring Imperial communications. They're calling for reinforcements and trying to understand what they're facing. How are the ship's systems performing?" Rodriguez smiled as he felt the Terra's Wrath analyzing potential tactical scenarios with inhuman speed. "Better than expected, Doc. The neural interface is allowing the ship to learn from human combat instincts. It's developing new tactical possibilities that the original alien designers never imagined." The ship's consciousness had evolved during the brief battle, incorporating Rodriguez's human creativity into its decision-making processes. Where Imperial ships relied on logical, predictable tactics refined over centuries of conquest, the Terra's Wrath could make intuitive leaps that confounded enemy expectations. Admiral Vextar made his decision. "All ships advance in attack formation. Overwhelming firepower will compensate for their technological advantages. Launch all fighters and prepare for full fleet engagement." The 47th Pacification Fleet began moving forward, 234 capital ships arranging themselves in a massive wall of destruction. Thousands of fighter craft poured from their hangars, forming clouds of smaller vessels designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers. Rodriguez watched the approaching armada through the ship's sensors. By any logical calculation, the odds were impossible. A single ship, no matter how advanced, shouldn't have been able to stand against an entire Imperial fleet. But Rodriguez had learned that the Terra's Wrath didn't follow logical calculations. "Command, the entire Imperial fleet is advancing. I'm going to try something unconventional." "What do you have in mind?" Dr. Chen asked. "Human tactics. The Empire has been conquering logical species for thousands of years. They've never faced anyone crazy enough to try what I'm about to do." Rodriguez pushed the neural interface to its limits, merging his consciousness completely with the ship's systems. The boundary between human pilot and alien technology dissolved, creating something new. A hybrid intelligence that combined human unpredictability with technological capabilities beyond Imperial. Understanding. The Terra's Wrath accelerated, directly toward the center of the Imperial formation at impossible speed. Every tactical manual in the Empire warned against such a suicidal approach. Concentrated fire from dozens of ships should have vaporized the Earth vessel within seconds. Instead, the ship began moving in patterns that hurt to watch. It folded space around itself, creating brief tears in reality that allowed it to appear in multiple locations simultaneously. Imperial gunners found themselves firing at shadows while the real target attacked from directions that shouldn't have existed. The battle became a nightmare for Imperial forces. The Terra's wrath struck like lightning, appearing long enough to destroy or disable enemy ships before vanishing into distorted space. Traditional Imperial formations, designed to maximize firepower, became liabilities, as ships found themselves unable to target an enemy that refused to follow predictable movement patterns. Rodriguez fought like no pilot in Galactic history had ever fought. The neural interface allowed him to process tactical information at superhuman speeds, while maintaining the creative unpredictability that defined human nature. He made decisions that pure logic would have rejected, following instincts that consistently proved correct. The ship's weapon systems had evolved beyond their original specifications. Instead of simple energy blasts, they projected localized distortions in spacetime that could tear apart enemy vessels at the molecular level. Defensive systems adapted in real time to counter Imperial weapons, learning and improving with each exchange of fire. Admiral Vextar watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by tactics that violated every principle of space warfare. The enemy ship appeared to be everywhere at once, striking with precision that suggested intimate knowledge of Imperial weaknesses. His formations were useless against an opponent that could apparently teleport at will. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're intercepting transmissions from the enemy vessel. They're using standard Imperial frequencies, but the language appears to be some form of primitive dialect." "Let me hear it," Vextar ordered. Rodriguez's voice filled the bridge of the Iron Conquest. He was speaking to his command center on Earth, but the Imperial translation systems made his words understandable. "Command, I'm adapting new attack patterns based on weaknesses in their formation structure. The ship's consciousness is learning to anticipate their responses faster than they can adapt. These guys have been conquering predictable opponents for so long, they don't know how to fight someone who makes it up as he goes along." Vextar felt cold understanding wash over him. The enemy wasn't just technologically superior. They were strategically unpredictable in ways that Imperial doctrine couldn't counter. His fleet was being defeated by an opponent who refused to follow established rules of warfare. "All ships," he broadcast, "scatter formation. Independent maneuvers. Do not maintain predictable patterns," but it was too late. The Terra's wrath had already learned to read Imperial tactical thinking. As ships broke formation and attempted random movements, the Earth vessel anticipated their actions with supernatural accuracy. The neural interface allowed Rodriguez to think like an Imperial commander, while retaining human unpredictability. One by one, Imperial ships fell to weapons that rewrote the laws of physics around them. Cruisers that should have been heavily armored found their hulls separating into component molecules. Destroyers attempting evasive maneuvers discovered that their enemy could predict movements they hadn't yet decided to make. The tide of battle turned completely when Rodriguez attempted something that no sane pilot would have considered. He flew the Terra's wrath directly into the midst of a squadron of Imperial battleships, using the ship's space-folding capabilities to create a localized gravitational anomaly. The battleships found themselves pulled together by forces beyond their ability to resist. Before their captains could react, the Earth ship had disabled their engines and weapon systems with surgical precision, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. "Command," Rodriguez reported, "I've neutralized another squadron. These ships are designed to fight opponents who think like them. But humans don't think like anyone else in the galaxy." Admiral Vexitar realized that his fleet was facing complete destruction unless he changed tactics immediately. The enemy ship wasn't just superior. It was learning from every engagement, becoming more effective with each passing minute. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vextar was forced to consider a possibility that Imperial doctrine insisted was impossible. He was going to lose this battle. The primitive world that his survey teams had dismissed was defending itself with a single ship that had already proven capable of destroying the finest fleet the Empire could field. Worse, the enemy appeared to be gaining strength as the battle continued. As more Imperial ships fell to the impossible Earth vessel, Vextar began to understand that his empire had made a catastrophic error. They had underestimated not just Earth's technology, but the fundamental nature of human warfare itself. The galaxy was about to learn that humans fought wars very differently than anyone else. Admiral Vextar surveyed the tactical display with growing desperation. More than half of his fleet was either destroyed or disabled, drifting hulks bearing testament to the impossible capabilities of a single Earth ship. The 47th Pacification Fleet, pride of the Imperial Navy, was being systematically dismantled by an opponent that shouldn't have existed. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors are detecting additional energy signatures from the third planet. It appears they have more ships." Vextar felt his scales ripple with fear. If Earth possessed an entire fleet of ships like the one currently destroying his forces, the Empire faced a threat unlike anything in its history. But as he studied the sensor readings more carefully, a different possibility occurred to him. Those aren't ships, he realized. They're installations, ground-based defenses. The revelation sparked a desperate plan. If he couldn't defeat the Earth ship in direct combat, perhaps he could force its surrender by threatening the world it protected. Imperial doctrine was clear. When facing superior tactical opponents, target their strategic weaknesses. All remaining ships, Vextar broadcast, form up for planetary bombardment. We're going to glass that world and end this threat permanently. Rodriguez felt the shift in Imperial tactics through the neural interface before the enemy ships had finished changing formation. The Terra's Wrath analyzed their new positioning and transmitted the tactical assessment directly to his consciousness. The Imperial fleet was preparing to attack Earth itself. "Command, this is Rodriguez. The Imperial fleet is moving to bombardment positions. They're targeting Earth directly." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice carried barely controlled panic. "Marcus, we have ground-based defenses, but they're not designed to stop a full fleet bombardment. You have to stop them." Rodriguez felt the ship's consciousness responding to his emotional state. The neural interface carried his determination and protective instincts into the vessel's systems, causing capabilities he didn't know existed to come online. Warning displays flickered as the ship pushed beyond its theoretical operational limits. "Understood, Command. Terra's Wrath is moving to intercept." What happened next would be remembered as the most impossible feat in the history of space warfare. The Terra's Wrath accelerated to velocities that should have torn it apart, using space-folding technology in ways that defied every law of physics. The ship didn't just move between the Imperial fleet and Earth. It created a defensive barrier that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Rodriguez felt his consciousness expanding through the neural interface, touching systems and capabilities that the ship's original designers had never imagined. Human creativity and alien technology merged completely, creating something that transcended both species' limitations. The Imperial bombardment began as planned. Dozens of dreadnoughts opened fire simultaneously, unleashing enough destructive energy to crack a planet's crust. The concentrated firepower should have overwhelmed any defensive system in existence. Instead, the energy beam struck an impossible barrier of twisted spacetime that the Earthship had created around the entire planet. The Terra's Wrath was somehow projecting a defensive field large enough to protect a world while simultaneously engaging multiple Imperial capital ships in combat. Admiral Vextar watched in horror as his fleet's bombardment was completely negated. The Earthship was doing something that violated every principle of energy conservation and tactical possibility. No vessel, regardless of its technology, should have been able to generate defensive fields on such a scale. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the enemy ship appears to be drawing power from local space-time distortions. It's using our own weapon discharges to strengthen its defensive capabilities." The battle reached its climax as Rodriguez pushed the neural interface to levels that should have killed him. His consciousness merged so completely with the ship's systems that the boundary between human and machine ceased to exist. In that moment of perfect unity, the Terra's Wrath achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. The ship created localized tiers in space-time that allowed it to engage the entire Imperial fleet simultaneously. From the perspective of the enemy ships, dozens of identical Earth vessels appeared throughout their formation. each one as deadly and unpredictable as the original. But Rodriguez knew the truth. There was still only one ship, existing in multiple dimensional phases at the same time. The neural interface allowed him to coordinate attacks across parallel realities, striking at Imperial vessels from directions that literally didn't exist in normal space. The destruction was absolute. Imperial ships found themselves under attack from weapons that fired from impossible angles, using energy patterns that their sensors couldn't detect until it was too late. Advanced targeting systems designed to track the fastest ships in the galaxy proved useless against an opponent that could exist in several places at once. Admiral Vextar realized that defeat was inevitable when his own flagship came under direct attack. The Iron Conquest, most powerful ship in the Imperial fleet, was systematically disabled by weapons that seemed to rewrite reality around them. Emergency systems failed as the ship's basic structure was altered at the molecular level. Admiral, his communications officer managed to report, "The enemy ship is broadcasting on all Imperial frequencies. They're transmitting throughout the galaxy." The transmission that followed would change the course of galactic history. Rodriguez, speaking through the neural interface that connected him to communication networks across known space, delivered a message that reached every Imperial world simultaneously. "Citizens of the Galactic Empire," his voice carried across star systems, "this is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of Earth. Your fleet entered our solar system with the intention of conquest. They discovered that humanity will not be conquered." Images of the battle accompanied the transmission. Imperial ships being systematically destroyed by weapons technology that seemed magical in its capabilities. The message was clear. The supposedly invincible empire had met its match. "Earth extends an offer to all Imperial worlds," Rodriguez continued. "Join us in creating a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Those who choose war will face the same fate as this fleet." Admiral Vextar found himself in command of fewer than 30 functional ships, the remnants of a fleet that had numbered over 200 only hours earlier. His superiors would demand explanations he couldn't provide, answers to questions that challenged everything the Empire believed about its own superiority. "Admiral," his navigation officer reported, "we're receiving priority communications from Imperial High Command. They're demanding a full tactical report." Vextar stared at the Earthship that had single-handedly destroyed his fleet. The vessel hung in space like a dark angel, its hull shimmering with energies that Imperial science couldn't comprehend. Around it, the defensive barrier protecting Earth continued to pulse with impossible power. "Send this message to High Command," Vextar said quietly. "Earth is no longer classified as a primitive agricultural world. Reclassify as extreme threat, potential Empire ender. Recommend immediate cessation of all hostile activities toward Sol system." "Sir," his communications officer asked, "what should we tell them about our casualties?" Vextar looked at his tactical display one final time. The 47th Pacification Fleet, most powerful military force the Empire had ever assembled, had been reduced to scattered survivors by a single ship from a world they had dismissed as primitive. "Tell them," he said, "that we underestimated humanity, and that mistake may have cost us the Empire." The surviving Imperial ships limped away from Earth's solar system, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The Empire's age of unchallenged dominance was over, ended by a species that fought wars with creativity and determination that no one had thought possible. Rodriguez slowly disconnected from the neural interface, feeling human consciousness return to normal parameters. Around him, the Terra's Wrath powered down systems that had operated beyond their design specifications. The ship had been changed by the battle, evolved into something greater than its creators had intended. "Command, this is Rodriguez. All Imperial ships have withdrawn from the system. Earth is secure." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice carried relief and amazement. "Marcus, we monitored the entire engagement. What you accomplished today, it's going to change everything." Rodriguez looked through the ship's viewports at the blue-green world that had been his home for 34 years. Earth looked the same as it always had, but he knew that humanity would never be the same. They had announced their presence to the galaxy, not as another conquered species, but as a force that could challenge the established order. "Doc," he said, "I think we just started a revolution. Across the galaxy, Imperial worlds received the transmission that announced Earth's existence. Some planets began planning rebellion against their Imperial governors. Others started building ships based on the technological principles they had witnessed. The message was spreading. The Empire could be defeated. Humanity had emerged from obscurity in the most dramatic way possible, proving that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one you never saw coming. The galaxy would never underestimate Earth again.